In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you.
Welcome to Doomed to Fail. This is a new day. We did not just cut that last recording off and move on to a new recording. We're joined here by Taylor. We're going to be discussing a historical tale today about a red flag relationship that went awry. How are you doing, Taylor?
I'm good. This is not about a relationship, but it's about a person who failed.
Are you still drinking 19 Crimes?
Yeah.
It's been 3 days and you're still drinking the same glass of wine?
Could you imagine? Good for me if it was. Did you see that there's a thing one time that was like for sale on the internet, and it was like, this wine cork can tell you if your wine is old. And I'm like, what?
Who drinks their wine
Who
that
has
slow?
that problem?
Yeah, seriously. Well-adjusted people, maybe?
I guess, but like, then don't even bother.
Yeah.
A normal thing to say. Totally fine. Cool. Well, hi,
You're
Fars.
doing great. Hi,
We're
Taylor.
doing great. Okay. You're drinking water. You're going to go to yoga. But I am drinking wine. But if I were really in this story, I might be drinking some whiskey because we're going back to the 1960s. So it always feels like a whiskey and a cigarette kind of time. You know?
No, not cigarette, cigar.
Not like a what's
Is
the
it Fat
cigarette in
Cat time?
What's the cigarette in Mad Men? Like the Pall
Oh,
Malls
Virginia Slims.
or whatever. Yeah. I just feel like you'd be, or Lucky Strikes.
Ooh, those are good.
Oh, cigarettes.
God, cigarettes are terrible.
There's no cigarettes in this, but whatever. Okay. So the other day, bars, I went to the library because the library has a book sale, and hardcover books are $1 each, or it's 4 for $3. So I bought a ton of books. I bought a bunch of Taylor Caldwell books. She's like an author from like, I don't know, a while ago. She like wrote, I haven't read them yet, but I bought like 9 of them because I remember seeing a Taylor Caldwell book, and she's like the oldest Taylor woman I could like find. So I was like excited that she was like an older woman named Taylor. So I bought a bunch of those, but then I found this book that I learned later was out of print, and I read the first like 20 pages, and I was like, I'm never going to finish this in a week. So I rented a book on Libby, which is the Audible, not Audible, but like audiobook app from the library. So I rented a book and I listened to that instead, but I kind of looked in this book anyway. But anyway, I'm going to tell you about another trial of the century, that before all the other trials of the century. I'm going to hold my book up because I'm going to talk about the assassin of the assassin, Mr. Jack Ruby.
I love Jack Rubenstein.
So this book I got at the library, The Trial of Jack Ruby, a classic study of courtroom strategies by John Kaplan and John R. Waltz. And I immediately showed all my friends this picture because John R. Waltz is 35 in this picture. I'm going to show it to you. Wait, can you see it?
I mean, I can see him being 35, and I mean
he's a real 1967 35.
Yeah, that's like 35 when you live to 52. You know?
Like he already had kids in college, you know, like that kind of 35. But I'll share that. But anyway, this book is amazing. It's out of print and I'm super excited. I also used my own personal copy of the Warren Report, which I'm also holding up for you, that I've highlighted, that I bought at a sale. And then the book that I read, the main one that I got from the library, I'm going to grab it. I just took a picture of it to make sure to tell you. It's by Dan Abrams. It is Kennedy's Avenger, Assassination, Conspiracy, and the Forgotten Trial of Jack Ruby. So, you ready?
Love it.
Okay. When I was growing up, there's some things that I knew about JFK, like that I feel like everyone knows, and there's stuff that I learned later that I was like, why don't we learn that as well? I knew he was killed in Dallas. It was on video. There's like suspicious, like grassy knoll, the guy with the umbrella, you know, all that stuff. And I knew that Lee Harvey Oswald did it from the book depository, from his work. That's what I knew. Stuff that I didn't know that I learned later that is so much more fun, that makes it more fun, is just like the tension in Dallas about JFK's visit, that he was in the car with the governor of Texas, John Colony, who was also shot. He was in the hospital for, a while with his injuries. He survived. Also, Lee Harvey Oswald killed a cop named J.D. Tippit that same day.
Yep.
Which I didn't know. And also, Lee Harvey Oswald had tried to kill Edwin Walker, another politician, a while before. So he was like not brand new to this assassin thing. And I also didn't know about Jack Ruby. Like I feel like I don't know why we don't know more about him, but I didn't know about him until it wasn't one of the first things I learned.
Taylor, real quick before we get too deep, because I've been talking a lot about this lately. We're on the same page that the Secret Service killed Kennedy, right?
I think that they like helped, but I think Lee Harvey Oswald did it.
I mean, I think it was an accident. Or
I think it was both.
Jakey. Okay.
I think
Okay.
it was both. I
Well,
think Lee Harvey Oswald did it the first, and then the Secret Service was like fumbling, hungover, and then they did it, and
they
then
shot. Yeah.
they shot it. But I don't think Harvey Oswald didn't do it. I think he did.
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
was
He
alarm.
he definitely
Yeah.
took the first shot, the second shot, and then from a legal perspective, felony murder. He's the reason why he's dead because he started the
Yes.
triggering events. But like,
Hmm.
I do also think that the guy accidentally shot him in the back of the head from his Secret Service car.
I think we talked about this a little bit in our Kennedy episode, but I think I mean, obviously, like this is the conspiracy theory, but and a lot of it is because of Jack Ruby. It's kind of Jack Ruby's fault that we have this conspiracy because we don't know what the fuck happened and we will never know. But he also like he was wearing a back brace, Kennedy, so like he moves in a way that's weird
Yeah,
that
that's true.
than you would think. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. But let's talk about Jack Ruby.
Let's.
Jack Ruby, as you said, was born Jacob Leon Rubenstein on March 25th, 1911 in Chicago, Illinois. He grew up in a Jewish family, which is important later. He didn't get a lot of schooling. He was in foster care for a little bit of his youth. His mom was a schizophrenic and his dad was an alcoholic. So he kind of didn't have a chance. He had like a lot of like a rough childhood. He had a couple siblings. He was like a punk kid. He was born in 1911. So I feel like imagine him in like 1920 Chicago being like 10 years old and being like, I'm Jack Ruby. I'll shine your shoes. I'll do that thing for you. Blah, blah, blah. Like, like a little bit of like a kid wanting to like be more than he was and wanting to like be popular and like kind of a little punk kid. He's not in school. He's just
Yeah.
like around. During World War II, he joined the Air Force. Everybody really liked him. He was a guy's guy, kind of a class clown, maybe a little bit annoying, like maybe a little
Oh,
bit like trying too hard.
yeah, yeah. Tryhards.
You know what I mean? So after World War II, he moves to Dallas and he runs some nightclubs with his sister. This is where he changes his name to Jack Ruby from Jacob Rubenstein.
Yeah, because he wanted to be less Jewish because being
Yeah,
Jewish in the 1920s probably wasn't easy.
yeah, totally. Even post World War II, I mean, America, we were terrible. So by now it's 1963, and he runs two clubs. He runs a Carousel Club and the Vegas Club. The Carousel Club in Dallas is kind of a strip joint. The Vegas is more of a rock and roll place. Probably had dancers. It's like running adult clubs in Dallas.
Yeah.
He continues to be a guy's guy. He gets in fights a lot at work, like either kicking out patrons or fighting with other people that work there. But afterwards, he kind of doesn't remember, or he like apologizes in like a weird way, and he's like, "Oh man, it clips on and off." If that makes sense.
Yeah, I read that, or I heard that he was actually like a pretty hot-headed guy.
Yeah,
Was he actually called Sparky, or
I
was
don't
that
know.
just a joke that Henry made?
I
Was
don't
that
remember hearing
Henry?
that, but it
Okay.
could have been. It could have been. No, I don't know. I don't think I heard that, but maybe he did. I did listen to the last podcast about that last episode of the JFK that mentioned Jack Ruby, but yeah, that he feels like a Sparky. He's like
Yeah, yeah,
he says, "I'm Jack Ruby" all the time.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
he has the fedora, he has his like little suit on. He's like, "I'm Jack Ruby." He continues to be like a guy's guy. He got in a fight with someone at work one time, and that person bit the tip of Jack Ruby's finger off. That's how like intense the fight was. So he
Jeez.
like doesn't get in like zero fights. He doesn't make fights. There's a union that he's involved in, the American Guild of Variety Artists. That's the union for his dancers. So he like has some like skirmishes with them. He always wants to be a little more popular than he was, and he always kind of wants to be like a mafia bad guy,
Yeah,
but he's
yeah.
not. Like that's part of the conspiracy and part of the like who is Jack Ruby is like he was like tangentially around the mafia, but he's also like around the police. And he was also around reporters. He was also around groups of people trying to find where he could like fit in and like have an influence. And there's like potential of the FBI had contacted him to be like, can you help us and like report on the mob? Because he was like that kind of guy. Like he didn't belong anywhere, but he was like in and out of different circles.
Right.
Make sense? He would always hand out cards for his club that would be like, hey, you can get in free to the Carousel Club tonight, and he'd be like, I'm Jack Ruby, here's a card. Like, that's the kind of
Yeah,
guy
you
he
like to be a
was.
man about town and like
Yeah,
to
exactly.
feel important.
He never marries. He has a girlfriend for a while, but they break up. He never marries. He lives with his sister for most of the time. He lives in Dallas, but by 1963, he has a roommate. So he's living with a dude, the roommates. He also has a bunch of dogs, and he loves them. Like, calls them his children, loves them, calls one of them his wife. Kind of weird, but
It's a
like,
little
it's
extreme.
important to know that like Jack Ruby loves his dogs. So he's like a big dog person. So he doesn't have like he has like a lot of siblings around the country that he calls, but he has his dogs that he like really lives with and loves. He's also at this time taking a drug called Preludin, which is an appetite suppressant, like a weight loss drug, and it's a smidge of methy.
Okay.
So it's like kind of like a speed to like make you not want to eat, you know? So he's a little bit hyped up on this drug,
They had access to
finally.
so much more effective drugs than we do now.
I know, I think it's still available, but I couldn't really understand the Wikipedia page. But
I mean, probably shouldn't take it, but yeah.
I mean, don't take it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he's taking that drug. Jack's been in trouble with the law a little bit, but like nothing big. Just like sometimes his alcohol license runs out or his club's open too late or whatever, but nothing terrible. He knows a lot of policemen. He knows the cops. He's also doing some like side things. Like he's hustling these twist boards that are like a thing you stand on and like do the twist for like weight loss.
Yeah.
That's something I'd buy. And then he also was trying to sell Jeeps to Cuba. So I thought that might have
I
made him like
remember
a
this.
communist. Yeah. But like he wasn't a communist. He wasn't like in cahoots with Cuba. He was just trying to make a buck, you know?
It sounds like he just wanted to like be in any spot that made him seem like he was an important man, and like I'm part of like some spy thing. With, yeah,
Exactly.
sounds like a
I'm Jack
nerd.
Ruby. I'm important. Yeah, exactly. But another thing that we know about Jack Ruby is that Jack Ruby loved John F. Kennedy. He had a picture of him in the club, in his clubs, which like people used to have pictures of the president. They said this in last podcast more than like they do now. But still, he like really did he did love Kennedy, especially in Texas where people weren't, were pretty conservative and didn't love Kennedy, as we've said. And he one thing he loved about JFK is like as another thing, I guess another thing that I knew about JFK earlier was that he was Catholic. And I guess Biden's the second Catholic president, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And but because he was Catholic, that was a huge deal. So, and he was also like very kind to Jews. Like he had no anti-Semitism in his platforms. And Jack Ruby saw that and really respected that. So he loved Kennedy as a president. So it's November 1963. We're in Dallas. We're in Texas. Texas is rough. It's not Democrat country. Might be in Austin.
It's so hold on. So it's not Texas. It is specifically Dallas.
It's also all
Dallas
Texas.
is like this central hub of like just every dipshit, horrible, inbred moron that you have in all of Texas just coalescing in one spot.
And
And
that's
it's
where we
still
are.
that way.
Yeah,
So
that's where we are. And we're gonna
also,
so
I'm from Dallas, so I'm allowed to say this.
that's true. That's true. Fars is from Dallas. So I'm going to go through some timelines and then we'll talk about the trial and the people involved in the trial. But so JFK is visiting Dallas. As we know, they don't love him, but he's there anyway. So right after noon on November 22nd, 1963, also plug, don't watch the 11/22/63 show on Hulu, but read the book, the Stephen King book, 11/22/63. It's great.
Stephen King wrote a book about JFK's assassination.
It's so good. You have to read it. It's great.
What's it again?
11/22/63. It's just the date. It's not like a non-fiction book. It's a fiction book. There's like magic in it, but it's real good.
Okay. Noted.
Okay. So Lee Harvey Oswald shoots JFK. Chaos. Da 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 da. While this is happening, Jack Ruby is in the office of the Dallas Morning News, putting in weekend ads for his clubs. He had to go in person to put in ads for his clubs to be in the paper. He was visibly upset before knowing that JFK had been shot. He was upset about the Weissman ad. Do you know what the Weissman ad is?
No.
So it is an ad that was put in the paper in Dallas before he got there, and before JFK got there. That was sort of like, we don't want you here. Dallas doesn't want you here,
Yeah.
essentially. And so it was in the paper, and Jack Ruby was upset because I don't know, I didn't read enough on like exactly who wrote it, if they ever figured it out, but it sounded like a Jewish name. So Jack Ruby was like, they're gonna blame Jews for if anything bad happens here in Dallas for JFK. So he was like upset. He was like, I want him here, like I like him, and was really like thinking about that in his head when this happened. So all of a sudden, the newsroom erupts into chaos, obviously, because they find out that the president's been shot. Jack is stunned. He just kind of sits there for a while. Can't believe that this has happened. Everybody is like kind of going crazy. They're running around, getting the news out across the country, across the world. My parents were very young when it happened, but my dad always says my uncle, his uncle, my great uncle, was in Mexico on vacation, and he was at a bar in Mexico, and the bartender said, "Your president's dead." And my
Whoa.
and my uncle was like, he said, was it a car accident? Because that was like the only thing he could think of. Like, was it did a plane crash? Like, what could have possibly happened? Like you just it's such like a crazy thing to have happened. So JFK shot, rushed to the hospital, he dies. Lee Harvey Oswald leaves the book depository. Long story short, gets stopped by a cop, kills the cop, goes to a movie theater, gets caught. They know it's him.
That's right. I thought he killed a cop in the movie theater, but I think I'm wrong. Right?
Yeah, it was like on the street.
Okay. Yeah.
And then he
And
killed
that was
JFK. Yeah.
Oak Cliff. I remember that. It was Oak Cliff movie theater, which is now like a super gentrified part of town. But yeah.
Mm, makes sense. So Jack spends the rest of the day. He cancels his ads for the club because, like, agree to agree. It's not great to have an ad for your strip club up on the weekend that the president's been shot, or be like, come here to relax. Things are fucked up. You could go either way. But he cancels his ads. He closes his clubs for the weekend. And he's in debt. Like Jack owes money to a lot of different people. He needs to have his businesses open, but he closes them for the weekend, just like out of respect. And he's like really trying to like overly show respect and overly show remorse
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
this. Like so he cancels his ads. He kind of runs around in kind of like a chaos. He calls everyone he knows. He calls his siblings, he calls his friends, he calls his ex-girlfriend. He hasn't been with her in a while, but he calls her anyway because he's like needs to talk to someone. He can't believe this just happened. He can't believe it happened in Dallas. He's worried about Dallas. He's worried about Jews in Dallas. He's worried about like the future of the country. Like so many things are going through his head. He's kind of like it's all spinning. And he's not the only one, I imagine. You know,
Yeah, of
like
course.
the
A
whole
president
country.
being killed is a huge deal.
Yeah. So he goes to temple. He's up very, very late. He tries to buy sandwiches for the police, but they just ate. So he has all these sandwiches and he brings them to a radio station. He's just like driving around and like stopping in places and calling people and like a whole thing.
He thinks he needs to do something, but he doesn't, and he doesn't know what to do, and so he's
Exactly.
trying different things.
And there's nothing for him to do, but he just like
Right.
wants to do something. Yes. So at 11:30 p.m. on that day, there's a press conference and they bring Lee Harvey Oswald out to the press to show them
That was a
that,
bad
that
move.
he's there. But Jack Ruby's there. He kind of walks in with some other reporters. He does a weird thing these 2 days where he like is like next to the press in a way, like he's on the phone sometimes and like to the newspaper and gets the newspaper to talk to a judge and like does these things that like maybe they think that he's a reporter. Like this is where he's trying to like kind of be a reporter. And he's standing on a table with a full view of Lee Harvey Oswald and nothing happens. They take Lee Harvey Oswald back in. This is still the 23rd, and Jack Ruby goes home. So he on the 23rd, or the next day, he spends most of the day. Sorry, that was the 22nd. Now it's the 23rd. The next day is pretty much the same. They remember him, his family and friends remember him calling everybody. He says specifically, I feel so awful for Jackie and the kids, which is totally fair.
Yeah.
Like he just like he can't believe this happened to like this perfect family,
But even
you know?
even that just belies the whole thing of like I want to feel important. Like I'm calling them Jackie and the kids as though like I matter to these people. They give a fuck about my
hmm
sympathy. Like oh, that's so
hmm
weirdo.
So he's kind of just like doing the same wandering thing that he did the day before until about 1:30 a.m. So he's up pretty late. And I know all of this because the Warren Report did like a minute by minute of his life, like the days leading up to it. But on November 24th, it's Sunday. It's 9 a.m. and Jack Ruby wakes up in his apartment. He does some laundry. He talks to his cleaning lady, Eleanor Pitts, on the phone and schedules time for her to clean the apartment. So he, every intention of coming home, talks to his cleaning lady. Now he is, so while Jack Ruby is talking to his cleaning lady, Lee Harvey Oswald has been interrogated by the police. He's been beat up. He has like a bruise on his forehead, all the things. He's set to be transferred to another jail at 10 a.m. So that's what the press thinks. That's what everybody thinks. So at 10 a.m., he's going to be moved. And that's going to be like the big event is moving him. At 10:15 a.m., Jack Ruby's still at home. A dancer from one of his clubs, Karen Carlin, calls him and asks for her paycheck. She hasn't received it yet. He owes her $25. So he says, okay, I will wire you $25. So Jack Ruby gets in his car with one of his dogs, drives to Western Union in downtown Dallas. He waits in line. There's a line. He waits patiently in the line. He goes up to the teller. He wires Karen $25. The receipt from his wire is timestamped at 11:17 a.m. Jack Ruby leaves Western Union, walks towards the police headquarters. As far as he knows, Lee Harvey Oswald is already gone. The news was
Yeah,
reporting that he'd be gone
it's
at
10
10 a.m.
a.m.
So there was a whole thing. There was a decoy armored car. There was like another armored car. It like didn't work. They knew there was like danger. They finally get him going. Lee Harvey Oswald was cold. He asked for a sweater. They gave him a couple options. He tried a couple on. He picked a black sweater. So he was like timing couldn't have been predicted because like weird stuff was happening, you
Yeah.
know? So all this causes a delay. He's handcuffed to two police officers. One of the police officers says to Lee Harvey Oswald, if someone shoots you, I hope there's good a shot as you are, because he's handcuffed to him. So they start walking through the basement of the police headquarters. Jack Ruby goes into an open garage that was probably left open for police cars to go through. He gets in front of the crowd of reporters, and at 11:21 a.m., and remember his Western Union ticket was 11:17 a.m. So at 11:21 a.m. on live TV, Jack Ruby shoots Lee Harvey Oswald in the stomach. The bullet ricochets through his body and he's rushed to the hospital. The same doctors who worked to save JFK less than 48 hours before worked on Lee Harvey Oswald and they could not save him. And he died.
I mean,
Uh,
I'm fine with it.
I know. Well, I'm not fine with it because now we don't know what happened. All we can do is speculate,
But think
right?
of how much awesome fanfic has been created because we have to speculate.
I did just plug that Stephen King book. You're not
There
wrong.
you go.
Yeah, fine. I'm not wrong. Did you ever watch Mad Men?
No, never got into that one.
So it's like the 50s and 60s. And in the episodes in the 60s, you know that JFK's assassination is coming because so he gets killed on a Friday and one of the not Don Draper, the main guy who you would know, but another guy that works there, his daughter's getting married on the 23rd. So you know like a week before, you're like, oh fuck. You know, like her wedding is like and it's terrible and like, you know, 20 people come out of 200, you know, and they're all in mourning, but they do it anyway and all these things. But Don Draper's wife, Betty, is watching TV and she's sitting in her living room, like smoking a cigarette, obviously. And the nanny, this like black woman who's watching her two kids, comes in like with the kids, and it happens live on TV. You know, everyone in the country saw Jack Ruby kill Lee Harvey Oswald. And Betty starts screaming. She's like, "What is going on? Like, what's happening? What's happening?" And then like her and the nanny like sit down together, which is like the first time they ever like, you know, were at the same level on the show for like all the reasons, but they were just like, what is going on? Could you imagine those 3 days? I just like
That would be
live TV,
wild.
the president gets shot, live TV, the president's assassin gets shot.
Didn't one of the cops or somebody scream Jack no because they knew what he was about to do?
Potentially. Yeah, we'll talk about what people thought they heard people yell. Someone did potentially yell, Jack, you son of a bitch, don't do it.
That's
Because they
right.
knew him.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. So Jack is arrested, and this is why we have conspiracy theories. Like I was just saying, like we will never hear from Lee Harvey Oswald. We'll never know, which is super frustrating. Cool, because we have all the conspiracy theories, but also like frustrating. Jack Ruby's in jail for a few months. In March 1964, Jack Ruby goes on trial for the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald. The question is Dallas on trial? Is Texas on trial? What do we even do here? Like, how can you possibly have a fair trial for someone who murdered someone on live TV?
I feel like those are questions that Oprah would be asking.
I know you're a lawyer, you tell me. Like, so that's, you know, like that's the question. Like the people in Dallas are like, we don't want to be seen as a place with like vigilante justice, but also like people are probably a
It
little
would have
bit
happened
like,
anyways because okay, so then the guy killed the president of the United States. Do you try him there? He
right.
killed.
And there's all sorts of weird laws and things that like don't that like I won't dig into, but like JFK's body technically should have been autopsied in Dallas, but it wasn't. But even though like because Lyndon Johnson was like, let's get the fuck out of here, and he wanted to like get into the business of being president and like move on, you know. But then
Yeah,
also like there's, you know, there wasn't some things weren't federal in like weird ways. So
yeah,
it's definitely going to be in Texas. So also the world is in chaos by now. We've kind of like not moved on, but like Vietnam's about to start, you know,
right.
and during the same time that the papers are reporting on Jack Ruby's trial, Robert McNamara, who we talked about last episode because he worked at Ford, was announcing in the newspaper that we're about to start Vietnam. So like
Yeah. There's
shit's
a
going on.
lot of, yeah, the world's going topsy-turvy.
Yeah. So we're in this trial for Jack Ruby. The key players from the legal side, Melvin Belli is Jack Ruby's attorney. He's actually the second one that they picked. It was like a whole process to get an attorney for him. The Ruby family had to sell their story. So they sold their story like in advance to get money to pay for a lawyer. Melvin Belli is not from Texas. He's from California. He's very flashy. He loves to like walk around. This is the time where everybody's watching Perry Mason, and like that's the kind of lawyer they're like expecting, like a TV lawyer. And so Melvin Belli is very much that
Nice. Good
like
for
wants
him.
to walk around. The judge hates it, makes him sit down all the time. Like doesn't like it. He's like, he wants people to draw charts and he wants to bring in props. And the judge is like, absolutely not. Joe Tonahill is the Dallas attorney who assisted Belli. Also, Phil Burleson is that team. The prosecution is led by William F. Alexander, Dallas County District Attorney, and Henry M. Wade, Assistant District Attorney. The jury itself is both men and women. After it's finalized, they did a whole bunch of stuff like who would want the death penalty, who wouldn't, how much did you see, what could you possibly know, things like that. The jurors had a fucking rotten deal. They stayed in a jail cell that was open. So they didn't even get a hotel. They stayed in a jail cell that was left open. They were paid $8 a day, but charged $1 per meal.
That
So
is
like
ridiculous.
barely not anything. They weren't allowed visitors. They had to travel around in groups, like that makes sense. But one of the jurors, his brother-in-law died and they didn't tell him until after because of Texas law at the time. There were no alternate jurors. So like if this jury didn't complete the thing, they have to start over
That's
again.
wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. So they really had to like keep this jury like laser focused. The judge Joe B. Brown, like I said, is very Texas. He reminds me of the judge in My Cousin Vinny.
Oh God. Yeah, that's
You know what I mean?
Herman.
Yeah, Herman Munster.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's very much like this is my courtroom and da da da. Even though he never used a gavel, that was like one of his shticks. But like, yeah. So first, the defense wants to move the trial out of Dallas because is it possible for him to even get a fair trial there? Everyone's riled up about it. They get a fair trial anywhere.
Anywhere. They have to
Everyone's
take
seen it.
him to like the Philippines. Like I don't know where
Yeah,
you take it. Like yeah.
there's no way. Like I said, my great uncle was in Mexico and they knew immediately. Like
Yeah.
everyone knew immediately. Within an hour, the world knew. This was in the 60s. So the trial was not moved. It stayed in Dallas. The prosecution did not do an opening statement, so the defense could not. So weren't able to open it up. The trial was not televised. It could have been. Just a few years ago, the Nuremberg trials had been televised. So there was like a precedent for having things like at least being able to see inside of a courtroom, but the Judge Brown said no. So the defense, here's what they said. They had some character stuff to say about Jack Ruby. He had a chance to shoot Lee Harvey Oswald at that press conference. Like I was saying, he was on the table. He was really close to him. He probably had his gun with him because it's Dallas. Everybody had a gun,
Yeah.
right?
I have a
So
gun
he
on me
did,
right now.
right, exactly. He didn't kill him then. He called his dogs his kids, and he left one of his dogs in the car. So like that's not something that you would do if you intended to never return,
It's
right?
true.
Like you would never leave Luna in a car if you thought you weren't coming back.
No, when you think about your dogs in that at that level, like you plan every moment of the day around their like safety and security. So
Yeah, exactly. So what the defense did is they pled guilty by reason of temporary insanity. They didn't allow Jack Ruby to testify in his own behalf, but because people had just started to hear about pleading the fifth, and there were some things on TV about like some gangsters pleading the fifth and like people that wanted to incriminate themselves. It was a weird time to be like, if someone doesn't testify on their own defense, like are they automatically guilty? Like no one, it was kind of weird, but he did not testify. So here's what they blamed. They blamed epilepsy, which is also what we blamed with Van Gogh as well. Van Gogh, people believe that he had temporal lobe epilepsy. So that was like the thing that like made him like kind of go crazy, like just in his mind, not have seizures, but in his mind. And another only in your mind epilepsy that they said that Jack Ruby had was psychomotor epilepsy. So in this form, a person suffers episodes of strange behavior. He may pluck at his clothes, pull pictures from the wall or books from shelves. And that might explain some of the things that he did were like he would get really angry and then not remember,
yeah,
you know, and like get in big fights and then have them just like, oh, we're fine, like 2 seconds later. So their strategy was that he was in like a fugue state when this was happening. He doesn't remember. If you look at the video I mean, like frame by frame, which they did, you can see that Jack Ruby's hand keeps pulling the trigger. So he said that he didn't remember doing it. And like, so he was kind of like in a thing of just like doing it. He, other stuff that people, like you were saying, that they heard people say, like the guy said, Jack, you son of a bitch, don't do it. Some of the witnesses said they heard him say, "You all know me, I'm Jack Ruby." That's what, like, like, guys, I'm Jack Ruby. Like, maybe he thought he'd be a hero, be
Yeah,
like,
that
Jack
was always
Ruby.
my assumption was
I
I'm
think
gonna
so
do
too.
this thing, and everybody's gonna be like,
You're
because
welcome.
because so much of us, and this guy, the personality of like, I'm important, people know me, like I'm
Tell
likable, like
me,
it's like
Jack
this
Ruby.
is probably another one of those. Yeah, I'm Jack Ruby, I'm Rubenstein.
Exactly. And some people heard him say, I meant to shoot him 3 times. I hope the son of a bitch is dead. And you killed my president, you rat. I don't think he said that, but that's cool. Should call people rats more often. And then they also heard him say somebody had to do it. The police wouldn't do it, you know? So he just thought he would like jump in and do something like everybody wanted to do. But he didn't remember. And the witnesses are all unreliable, like always. They all remember different things. So that their written testimony is different than what they say in the courtroom, which is different from what they remember of the day of,
Yeah,
you
yeah, he
know?
thought he was gonna be. This was gonna exalt him in some way.
Because I'm sure there were, like you just said, like, why the fuck not? There's millions of people who were like, I would love to fucking kill Oswald. Just kill
Yeah,
our president, like, sure, like they think he's a commie, he's a Russian, all the things. So they're like, everyone's mad. But this is America. You're not supposed to do that, essentially. So here's a fun tidbit that I didn't know until I was reading about this week is that during the trial, so the trial's in the Dallas courthouse. The courthouse is like a multi-story building that had just been built, and Dallas was like super proud of it. It had like the courtroom, jail cells. The top floor had a hanging room, so it'd hang people on the top floor, which feels weird. I feel like you should hang people on the ground.
it feels uniquely Dallas.
Yeah.
I'll give him that.
But during the trial, there was a prison escape, and 7 prisoners escaped
It's
from the
fun.
jail. Yeah, that's super fun. The New York Times headline is Dallas amused by escape at jail. Fifth fugitive is recaptured. 12 deputies are suspended. The guy who actually had orchestrated the escape, I can't remember, I didn't write down all those things, but he made a gun out of soap and like other things that he found and it looked really realistic, and that's how they all got out.
Did
So
Dillinger do that?
maybe. I don't know. It sounds super fun. It sounds like something you could do in the 20s, but maybe not in the 60s. A BBC reporter was overheard on the phone saying, I'm not drunk and I'm not kidding. There's been a jailbreak, which is super
You'll
fun.
talk so much funner back then.
So fun that happened. I think they eventually called the guys and whatever. So that happens during the trial. The prosecution was like, this was murder. Jack Ruby did it. Like, yes, he was sad, but he did it. And he planned to do it, and the defense is like, he didn't. Think of all the chances. Think of that Western Union line, even the fact that woman needed money from him. Like, he wouldn't have been there. He was at home doing laundry. Like, it all is just like happenstance. He like happened to be there. One of the defense brought in a bunch of doctors that talked about EEGs for the first time, which is like brain waves. Later, a scan, I think the original scan of Ruby's brain would be sold for $776 at auction. And like his gun was sold for like $50,000. The bullets, people bought all that shit like much
If
later.
I had the money, I would for sure buy that.
Yeah. So one of the foremost researchers on epilepsy and on the human brain, Frederick Gibbs, did say, quote, I have determined that Jack Ruby has a rare form of epilepsy. That's a form of seizures, but the type which afflicts 0.5% of all epilepsies, and it has a very distinctive epileptoid pattern. So he said, like, he did it. Like, he has epilepsy. He definitely, like, could have done this in this, like, fugue state. There were witnesses for Jack's character. They were like, he was so sad. He talked about Jackie and the kids the whole time. He was, like, upset, the whole thing. So they have tons of witnesses, the police, there's back and forth on their testimony, on their written statements. The closing day of the trial goes until 1 o'clock in the morning. Everyone's exhausted, but the judge is like, I'm about to lose this jury. They're going to freak out on me if they just stay here any longer.
Yeah.
There's no alternate closing statements. Neither of the lawyers are proud of their closing statements. They like wish they were better, but it was 1 in the morning. They're just trying to
Yeah,
get
what
the
are
fuck
you
out of
gonna
there, So people do judge Belli, Jack Ruby's lawyer, for not trying anything else. He went for all or nothing. He said it's temporary insanity, let him off, or nothing. He didn't give any options for like maybe it was like this kind of murder or this kind of blah 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 or like whatever it is. Because there were some where it could have been maybe he would have gotten 8 years in jail. Like but he went all or nothing
He murdered
with,
somebody on live television.
I mean, I don't know how you do that. Yeah. But he was saying he did it because he was, sick and emotional. The next day, the jury met. They didn't have a foreman yet. They voted for the foreman the day that they made their decision. They picked a guy who was in the bathroom, which is hilarious. They're like, cool, let's vote while he's out of the room.
I
Oh, great,
love
he's the
that.
foreman. So they deliberated for 2.5 hours. Do you know what the verdict was?
Guilty.
And what was the punishment?
It had to be life, right?
It was death.
Oh, you got death. Okay. Well,
Hmm.
yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Belisai loses his fucking mind. The court goes nuts. He yells, "This is a victory for bigotry." And he screams at Texas, and he screams at the law, and he screams at everyone. Everyone's yelling. Everyone, his family's crying. Everyone's yelling. It's chaos. Jack is taken away, and he goes to jail. While he's in jail, they work on his appeal because like he didn't have a fair trial because he had a crazy lawyer and it was in Dallas. Jack Ruby is slowly actually kind of going crazy while he's in
Yeah.
jail, as you would, I imagine. He thinks that thousands of Jews are being punished for what he did. And he imagines they can hear them being murdered on the floor below him. So
Yeah, I
he's like
remember this.
hallucinating. He tries to die by suicide a bunch. He like grabs a light while standing in water. He tries to hang himself. He's really worried for his family. What he really, really wants is to like take a lie detector and tell his story because he feels like he wasn't able to do that in his first trial.
Yeah.
Um, did you know that the guy who invented the lie detector also invented Wonder Woman?
No, it's so
Isn't that weird?
random.
I know it's so random. So I put that in there too. But so he eventually does meet with the Warren Commission. So the Warren Commission is like the commission to look into the death of JFK. They give him his lie detector. They do interview him and talk to him again and again. He says, "You just got to hear my story. You to understand it. I just want it to be good for Jackie and the kids." Like, the stuff that he keeps saying to like make it sound like he's a hero in his like
Fucking
deteriorating
loser.
mind. Eventually, his verdict is thrown out and he's granted a retrial. After this, everybody's written a book. Judge Brown wrote a book because his lawyer wrote a book. Jack Ruby had like he didn't think he ever wrote his book, but like people wrote books. But now it's 1967 and he's about to have his retrial, and he starts to feel kind of sick. He goes to the doctor. He has all the cancers.
Yeah.
He has lung cancer, liver cancer. He's riddled with cancer. Jack Ruby dies of an embolism on January 3rd, 1967, in the same hospital that JFK and Lee Harvey Oswald died in Dallas.
So weird.
And that's it. He never got retried. He never got the opportunity. He probably would have been in jail forever, maybe not death. But I think while I understand being so angry and so sad and so confused during that time, like it must have been just like otherworldly confusing. And to the right person who's at that right state of mind, whether it's epilepsy or it's the loneliness or it's the schizophrenia in his family or it's whatever it is that like makes this person be like, I need to do this because no one else will. And he had the
Yeah.
opportunity because he was like a guy's guy and was in there and knew everybody.
I think he was just a loser who wanted to be important and wanted to feel like he was a somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or he was hired by the government to kill
Or it's
him.
a conspiracy. There's some things that are like people are like, oh, I saw Lee Harvey in Jack Ruby's club and they were whispering, And you're like, I don't know. I don't think that's true.
The
But
only part of the explanation that would make any sense to me is like he was literally hired by the government to kill him because they're like they knew he had cancer already and was like, "We'll wipe out all your debts and you're gonna
mhm.
die in a few years anyways. It doesn't matter. At least now you'll be famous."
Yeah. I think that's wishful thinking, you know? But there's also another quote, I think it's in the Warren report, where he's like, can you believe that some nobody is now in history for killing the president? You know,
Who said that?
Jack Ruby about Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh
So maybe he
yeah,
was a little bit like, well, I'm a nobody, and like, how do I get to be, besides having a cool podcast, how do I get people to remember me forever? Oh, he said it's hard to realize that a complete nothing, a zero like that could kill a man like President Kennedy, you know?
such a weirdo.
Yeah.
Such a weirdo. Because the only other time I can think of somebody killing somebody on live TV was that dad who killed that guy who like kidnapped his son. Remember that?
Was it like in a courtroom?
No, I forgot. I don't know the exact. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but like the guy kidnapped the son, took him to a different state, and then the police found out where he was. They arrested him. They're walking him through the airport, and the dad
Mm.
of that kid pretended like he was on a payphone, and then
Hmm.
when he walked past him, turned around and shot him in the head.
I
Remember
think
that?
I do remember that. That's
And in
awesome.
that case, the jury was like, I mean, it was filmed. It was like, yes, you absolutely fucking blew this guy's brains out
Right.
on live television. It was you for sure that did that. And also, we're not gonna press. We're gonna. It was
Yeah.
jury nullification. Like you did it for the reason everybody else would do it. But in this
Like you
case,
shouldn't do that. The whole point of America is that you have a fair trial, but also like, yes.
also, yeah, we're totally cool with it if you do.
Yeah.
But like, it would be one thing if Jackie had shot Lee Oswald, right?
Yeah.
But if
hmm
some random nobody, like, it's just weird. It's just a
He's
loser
like, I'm doing
thing.
this for you, Jackie. And I'm sure she was just like, I
I don't
mean,
want to know
fuck.
you. I don't
Yeah,
want to
like
know
I
you.
want nothing to do with this.
Can I just
Exactly.
never come back to Dallas, please?
Yeah. I wonder if she ever did. I doubt it.
I doubt it.
Um, cool. Well, I know you have to go, but I have a little bit of ending listener mail for this email.
Let's do it.
Oh, well, my first one was a mixed reaction on our split episodes, which I shared in our last half that I heard a take it or leave it, or you guys don't seem excited about this. So I kind of like it now. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Anyway, and then also I wanted to mention Brad, my cousin Brad's email about Elon Musk to you, where
Yeah,
he brought up
yeah.
some good points about that I couldn't bring up in the moment about Elon Musk, and I wanted to know if you wanted to talk about those. Would you like to talk about those?
So it feels so I need to go to my yoga thing, and it feels like we could probably talk about that for like 20 minutes. Brad, I really
All right,
appreciate your
later.
letter. Brad, I really appreciate the letter. Like there was things that I actually texted Taylor about afterwards because I just didn't even know what those theories were. The Ukraine one or the pro-Russia one and the ancient aliens one were the two that just
hmm
totally threw me for a loop. And we actually never squared away the pro-Russia one, I don't think. But anyways, maybe we can save that for next week
Yeah, there's a
when I
lot
have a
to
little
talk
bit more
about.
time.
It's like it's not cut and dry. So I'm excited to talk about more. But thank you, Brad, who also went to Tokyo and ate that perpetual broth. So appreciate you
And
guys.
should we? I also brought up with Taylor that I brought another idea for a podcast for us, which is a podcast that I'm tentatively titling "Change My Mind About." Dot dot dot, and then every week we have a topic that we'll throw out there that me and Taylor will debate our perspectives on. And I don't know if that would be interesting to people. If it would be, let us know because now that we split the podcast up, the time suck of doing it is actually way I don't know what it's like for you, Taylor, but for me it's like been way better because it's like I can do like 2 hours of editing once and I can do 2 hours again later. Whereas like
hmm
beforehand it was like half of Sunday was just editing. And so this
hmm
kind of helps a little bit on that front.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I know the time
I,
is short.
yeah, and I think our point is like we're in our bubbles, and like everyone means well, but if you're stuck in a bubble, like what do you know and what don't you know? So we could like talk
So
about our shit.
I get told things by people on the left and people on the right that are stated as pure, unadulterated facts, and it absolutely still to this day and forever always will blow my mind. It's like somebody I hear it all the time, and that's why I was just like, so weird. Like, why does that person feel like that's true? And why do
hmm
they think I think it's true? And it happens on both sides. I was like, it would be so interesting to have like a breakdown of that echo chamber. Anyways, that was the
Yeah, I
idea.
do. I miss being around people who care about politics. Because I feel like I right now I'm like with me and my husband, but like my work is not politically based at all. So like shit happens in the world, and I'm like, anyone freaking out? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh my God,
And
I
that's
really
and
don't
that's
care,
the thing I've
guys.
also realized that now that I'm pushing like what 11 years or something in politics, I'm like you just stop thinking that intensely about
Yeah,
it when you're like, oh, I know the guys who are making the decisions to do the things that are happening. It's like it doesn't impact you as much. I mean, not impact you. It doesn't like weigh on you. And I don't know. I think I have a different perspective on it, and maybe
yeah.
that's
It's
not
interesting
good.
because like it's like the consequences versus the people. Like I read a quote by Michelle Obama where she was like, well, I can go to all these like big dinners with all these famous people because when I get there, I'm like, you guys aren't that smart. Essentially, like
Yeah,
you're making these decisions and you have this aura of you of being like amazing. But when I get there, I'm like, I mean, all right.
it's normal people. Yeah.
But the ramifications I think are huge. Anyway, go to yoga. Everyone, please follow us on social, Doomed to Fill Pod. Like and share. Tell your friends. Send us suggestions. I'd love to be more international. I'd love to be more diverse in the stories that we tell. So anything. Oh my God. Oh no, my book just fell. Ah. But anything that is a failure, relationship, invention, person, anything. Tell us.
Human consciousness.
We'll tell
Was
it back
that
to
a bad
you
decision?
in a fun way. It was. Lord. Okay, everyone, have a great week. We're gonna be fine.
Namaste.